So we're in the middle of tornado season right now, and I'm watching rain outside of my window. And just yesterday, there were reports of tornadoes touching down in the Midwest of our country, where they most frequently occur. So I want you to think for a minute about this question. Where do you think maybe the deadliest tornado in history ever touched down? Where might you guess? You're probably guessing somewhere in the Midwest, in that area that they call Tornado Alley, where unique climate conditions in the U.S. create conditions favorable for tornadoes to form, particularly warm, moist air from the Gulf of Mexico, and then cold northern air from Canada and the Arctic coming down and mixing together. It'd be a pretty good guess that's where most of the tornadoes really, and the most severe tornadoes hit. But you'd be wrong. In fact, if we look at the top 5 deadliest tornadoes, almost all of them are in Bangladesh, the only exception being one that crossed over 3 states in 1925 in the United States. So this begs the question, are tornadoes just worse in Bangladesh, which does have frequent tornadoes? What might be the social cause behind this? Well, we can think about what might cause that many deaths in 1925 in the US as well as today in Bangladesh. And a big question is social infrastructure. What kind of physical structures are people living in? The difference in Bangladesh is that many people live in very poor quality housing with minimal structure, maybe built out of corrugated steel or found materials. This is where many of our clothes are made, I might add. So when we look at the social impact of even things like hurricanes or tornadoes, they impact us all differently based on the society we live in. So even something as simple as weather can be very socially impactful. So in Bangladesh, it might not even be big, strong tornadoes. It's just the poor quality of shelter and housing leads to a lot more people dying more often. So in this section, over 3 videos, we're going to look at the social nature of the environment and the problems of thinking through the natural world. In this video, we're going to break down the idea of nature and what makes the natural world. What is the environment? We're going to look at some key environmental issues, particularly around global climate change and its impacts. Hopefully we'll have some discussion of environment and issues with capitalism. And finally look at some issues in another video on environment and inequality. So briefly, what is the environment? What do we refer to when we talk about nature and the environment? Are we talking about things that aren't built or engineered by people? Oftentimes we might put in a picture of trees, but even if as we look at this picture, we can see that the environment is very much crafted by people. These trees in Washington were planted, these beautiful cherry blossom trees were planted for this effect. So how do we divide humans from nature? And this is really part of the problems of thinking about the environment and nature, is we often consider human beings somehow apart from nature because we build and act on nature. And yet, this begs the question of, can we really find anywhere in the world that has been untouched by human activity, that's somehow apart from human life? Even if we go somewhere like natural parks and forests, these places are in fact engineered by humans. This idea is very much in the news now as people stay in due to a global pandemic, and people are seeing that without human activity around, there's much less pollution in the air, and animals of all kinds are sort of taking over spaces that humans have dominated for so long. But again, the idea that we're somehow separate from nature is maybe one of the major problems we face in thinking about the environment as something external to us, as opposed to something that our everyday activity is intimately a part of. Every time we drive, we consume, we throw something away, we're having an impact on the world we live in. We are part of the natural environment. And that kind of realization and the way we talk about it can be one of the main ways in which we try to act on environmental issues.